Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin. Today's video is an On My Sewing Table where I show you the projects that I'm working on. And one of them is a Scrappy Quilt As You Go project. And I'm so excited about it. So I have a lot to say. Stay with me. My husband and I have been watching Project Runway, the most recent season, and there are a million of them. We are all about the reveal. Brandon Maxwell in it loves a reveal, and we are right there with him. So my first thing to show you, my Scrappy Quilt As You Go project, is a reveal. So here we go. Look at all of that color. It makes me happy just having it on the table in front of me. So I'm making a Joseph's coat of many colors. Just kidding. It's for a bag. So just putting this on my table, all these colors, all these fabrics, just makes me so excited. I'm like the Pointer Sisters. I'm so excited and I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control and I think I like it. Anyway, I have never done I'm cracking myself up. Oh my goodness. I've never done a Quilt As You Go project before. And I have a wonderful friend and mentor who I had a very small segment of my life that connected with her, but she was so meaningful to me. And she messaged me several months ago, and she's been quilting forever, but has gotten to the place that managing a whole quilt is too much. And she said, if you ever do any Quilt As You Go content, have me in mind. That's not what she said, but whatever she said, it was like, you should do a Quilt As You Go. So simultaneously, my scrap bins have become a deluge of fabric. They're literally overflowing. And I don't really like waste. And we'll talk about that briefly later. And so I've just had this burden of I have all this great fabric behind me in these little wool felt containers from IKEA. And I'm not using it, but I want to. But a lot of the scrappy projects that I see out there, either the quilters are super organized and have their scraps already cut into 2.5-inch squares or 5-inch squares or 10-inch squares or whatever. And that's not me. And then the people who do the really super crazy, almost like crazy quilt, that's too chaotic for me. And so I'm trying to find my way around my scrap basket and to do projects that make me happy and use my fabric, but also, are kind of in that somewhat, if not totally orderly fashion. So I got out my fabrics. You should have seen my floor behind me. It was covered in scraps. And I just started pulling out fabrics that I liked. And if you're not familiar with Quilt As You Go, it is exactly like it sounds, which is you have fabric with your batting. And I happen to have extra polyester batting, which is perfect because I'm doing a bag. And so it's a little bit sturdier. Hopefully it won't collapse in on itself when I make it. And this is a pillowcase that I got at the thrift store. And I just did it really as a trial. Let's see how many strings I can pick off while I'm trying to tell you about this. And so I just did spray adhesive and put the polyester down and then started laying out strips. So to do the Quilt As You Go, essentially you start off by sewing one strip down, and then from every strip after, you just lay it down and match up the seam. So I'm going to show you how I did that on this piece right here. So if these make it into the final bag, so this would be sewn down, and then I lay this together like this, and then sew my scant 1/4 inch seam allowance right down there. And then that gets folded over like this. Gosh, the strings today. This is what happens with scraps, by the way. I have been picking off strings. Well, I'm always picking off strings. Strings. Paul calls me pig pen. I'm like, pig pen, except instead of the cloud of dust, it's lint and little pieces of fabric. But anyway, so then that gets folded over, and then the next strip gets sewn down right sides together, and so on and so forth. And that's how I've gotten here. So I started out with really actually much bigger pieces, and got to thinking about it and just feeling like the bag would look clunky. That's the word I'm looking for. Just the proportions would be wrong. And so what I'm doing is I started with one fabric, and I put what I thought was a complementary fabric next to it, and then so forth and so on. Not all of these are shirts. I have a lot of fat quarters that I picked up here and there that were things that I used small pieces of that were in my scrap bin. I really tried to stay in my scrap bin. I think I did 2 fabrics that I have leftover fabric but are still kind of in my stash. And it's these 2 greens over here. And then the way that I put this together, and I don't know if everybody else does this, probably not. I'm a little odd. I look at 3 or 4 fabrics together at a time because I feel like that's what your eye does. So for example, this gorgeous koi pink and coral and fuchsia, I looked at that fabric and I'm like, oh, I think I have a shirt that almost exactly matches that darker, which I do. And then I'm like, oh, what would complement that well? Oh, that blue is pretty. Oh, I have that blue pattern. And then, so that's pretty together. That's pretty together. That's pretty together. And so I just kind of did it that way rather than trying to eat the elephant all in one bite. And that's how I have such a variety of colors. For me, it works. Now, some people, this might be a little too scrappy. I feel like there's even scrappier from here. But I cut down my strips because they started out much wider and I made them much narrower. And what that has meant is that I could do more fabrics in there. I have not maintained the straightest line throughout my Quilt As You Go. And I did not use my walking foot, actually. I changed the setting on my presser foot so that it's just not the real heavy presser, and just kind of went for it. And what that has meant is that some of my lines are not super straight. And because I was really kind of doing it as a practice, I've just not been worried about it for once. One of my technicians, she says, Kathy, it's not that deep. She says it to me all the time. It's not that deep, which means, AKA, you're taking this too seriously. It's really not that serious. And so since I'm just making this up as I go along to make this tote bag, it's not that deep. And so if my gingham is not straight, or if I think I have a stripe in here that I promise you, I will not hold a straight line on that, it doesn't matter. And because I'm quilting as I go, it's done. I don't have to worry about like, oh gosh, it's not going to be a straight line. And now how am I going to stitch in the ditch? All that's handled. So let me show you the back so you can see. And I had a mistake where I put too hot of an iron up here and burned the polyester batting, but that will get trimmed off. And you can see, my quilting lines are not terribly straight. I had to go over a section right there, but this is going to be the inside of the bag, and so it doesn't matter. And then I think I'm going to take a pair of Paul's old black jeans, and the bottom half of the tote bag and the straps will be black denim. So I don't know, could be great, could be ugly. We'll find out. If you're going to QuiltCon, you might see it. So that's kind of where I am right now. I'm just doing a lot. It was the Christmas break. I got a lot of things done, and it cleared out space for me in my head. And so I think it has just opened up new creativity. And I was thinking about the color wheel because I sit around and think about the color wheel. And so I just started pulling out some fabrics from my scrap, like what goes with purple? I have a lot of purple. Well, yellow goes with purple. And in this case, the purple is kind of on the red end. And so I put citron with it. And then I was like, well, those are complementary. Well, so is navy, or so is blue and orange. And so that's a shirt. And I had this pear fabric that I just adore. This is Cave. I still have. That stuff. It won't go away, but it also keeps like popping up in fun places. And then I was thinking about how much I love blue and orange together. And it's not just because I'm an Auburn fan. And so I found this guy, which you just saw, probably that scrap. What's in here is really kind of a pinky, but that coral works because this is starting to be in the green family of blues. And then there's a orange that's kind of unto red. So it's an orange red, which then made me think this could be beautiful. P.S. Out of all of these, ooh. That's amazing. I love that. And if I had a whole lot more of that fabric, you can bet that I would be making a whole quilt out of that. And I may end up doing a video about this, so you may see more and more and more of that. And then this is interesting because this is one more step green, but I went a little lighter on this side and a little pinkier, but it's still peach. So it's technically still kind of in the orange family. I'm going I digress. Hashtag I digress. But aren't these pretty? Okay, so anyway, I'm doing lots of that. On to something new. So I was looking at baby quilt patterns using squares online because I love squares. And I stumbled onto this disappearing 4-patch block, which I have seen before. I mean, this is talking about nothing new under the sun. This is not new. But I saw this really pretty picture of a quilt and then backtracked to find where it came from. Material Girl Quilts is where I saw the original from. And she has a video about how to make a disappearing 4-patch with these dimensions. So if you want to check her out, we'll put that in the description box. And I thought, oh, I bet that would be so pretty. Simultaneously, I have been noticing, and I've mentioned it before, how much pink I have in my stash. I have so much pink fabric. Some of it's shirts, a lot of it, surprisingly, shirts, pillowcases, linens, all from the thrift store, and then a fair amount of fat quarters as well. Some of them I've gotten in a grab bag, and some I've picked up just because I liked. And I thought, that could be really pretty. It turns out I have a friend that I love dearly that loves pink and loves patchwork. She loves patchwork quilting. So I've not done a lot of kind of scrappy feeling quilts with low volumes mixed in. I usually kind of stick to either like straight white or straight cream. And so this time I thought I would step out a little bit and use shirts for the white part of the block and then just use my pinks the way I wanted to. And it has been so fun. It has been so fun to just get my pink and red tote out and just start pulling combinations. And I'm going to show you some fabrics that I have not made blocks of yet that I think are going to be pretty. So here's one, obviously gingham and pale pink. Here's another. The royal we. Actually, patrons know what I'm talking about. The brunch tier patrons know what I'm talking about. Been making these 4 at a time, 4-patch blocks, and then using the 4-patch to make the disappearing 4-patch. And so that's really a fun thing. Initially, we used Leah Louise tutorial on YouTube for the for the 4 at a time 4-patch. There are other videos out there. Probably put that in the description box as well. This was this fun fabric, and I put that away because it had a mark on it. I loved this fabric. It's weird because it's pink and orange together. It's like this. It's so pink. It's such a bluey pink. It's almost lilac or hyacinth, lilac. And so I put this Pepto Pink with it, and I love it. Same here. This is a fabric. These two were fabrics from my friend's garage. She was cleaning out her garage and found a tote full of fabric. And do you want it? Yes. So this is a shirt that's fabric that was handed down. And then this is that crazy, I don't know if you guys remember, if you were here for it. When I bought the pink crazy, I was like, it's like a clown stripe. And I wasn't sure I wanted to get it, and I got it anyway. So that's that, which is fun. And then this was a plaid shirt that I thought I would never use because it's one of those complex plaids. And I actually think it turned out really nice. And you can see this is a more low volume, obviously, than these other white ones. But hopefully, maybe we can zoom in and you can see this shirt has texture. It's got like a grid pattern on it. And so up close, same with this, it's a stripe herringbone. And so up close, it gives it a little bit of dimension since it's mostly white. So those are the blocks I've made. And then I want to show you some of the fabrics that I really love that are going to be coming. This is a fat quarter. It is Neve's Herons of Summer Cabin. Anyway, for cotton and steel. This was in a grab bag, and I loved it and instantly was like, what will I ever do with that fabric? And what's interesting to me about it is this hot pink, but then it's together with peach, or it looks like peach. So I'm going to pair that with that pale pink, almost peach. And I think that's going to be really interesting. I don't know. I think it's really cool. This one was another one I think came in some kind of bundle, which, I don't really buy a lot of bundles, but I have done just arbitrarily here and there. Paul got me a Ruby and Bee Solid bundle for my birthday, and I have been rationing those fabrics, and a lot of these pinks are from there. This one is shell pink. This one I just realized is one of those. It's posy, so that's probably why I have so much pink in my stash. But that's a beautiful fabric bundle if you are interested. Ruby and Bee Solids for Wyndham Fabrics. Wyndham Hill? I don't know. Anyway, so that's this. I really was trying to match this color. I don't have anything quite there. I could do that, but the orange kind of pops in that, which is fun. This loveliness. This may be my favorite fabric of, maybe not of all time, but I love it. This was the original blender fabric that my youngest daughter, who I call the colorist, found to bridge some fabrics in an Adventureland quilt that I made for a coworker. And it was like genius. And so now, and I just have loved it. It's birthday, and it looks like birthday, and it gives me all of the happy feelings. So this is a shirt, that's a shirt. Anyway, I think that's pretty together. Just loveliness. Sometimes I have pink shirts. These are both pink shirts, and they're kind of muted. This is an Oxford cloth shirt, and I like that. I don't know if that's going to make it to the final cut because it's so dull compared to the rest. This came in a viewer sent me. She gets a sewing box, and it was filled with plaids, and she's anti-plaid, which I understand that, and I love it. And so it's a little fat 8th, and I have been trying to decide. You can tell it goes red and it goes pink, all in the same fabric. You see that? Oh gosh, so pretty. So I can't decide if I do this, it's going to feel red. If I do this, I don't know that it's clashy as much as it's just like it. Will it pull the pink, or will it feel like I'm trying too hard? Which I sometimes do. Try too hard. And then this gingham, again, this fabric is getting a workout. P.S. So that's pretty to me. And then here's some of my low volumes. This purple is not going to be in there. We'll put that aside for now. This one is a pink tattersall. This came as a gift from some other fabric that I ordered from Quilts, and it has pink unicorns on it. And I thought, I will never use a fabric with pink unicorns. And then now here I am. And so I might use that as one of my background fabrics. That's just a white shirt. This you may or may not be able to see. Let's see if I can tip it. It's white fabric with a sheen, and it's got little white stars all over it. And then here's that shirt that I left kind of wrinkled so you can see it gives a lot of texture. So that is super exciting. Disappearing 4-patch. Just going to town on that. Every time I pull out these, I'm like, oh, I love this one. That to me is part of what makes quilting so great. It's just handling fabric, looking at these bright colors are making me happy. So that's that. And now for something completely different. So this is the Gingham Gems. It's also on the wall behind me that I talked about in a previous video. And if you just so happen to want to find it, it's the fabric pull. It's got these pink colors on it. You can pick it from the thumbnail. And I just was really in debate about what to do in the corners. And I talked about the different fabric combinations that I was going to put together. And I did settle on this. And I love the main colors. The corner pieces I really love up close. But behind me, if you look, to me they look a little bit almost like dingy. I think because the white is so white and these are just a pale yellow. But it also kind of evokes that luminaries look that I was going for. So I've just kind of embraced it. It's not that deep. I wanted to show you these for a very specific reason. Those of you that are reluctant to work with gingham because you think you can't get it perfect, just fear of gingham. And I love it. I'm in this project, I'm not trying to do this super, super precise. I mean, I want it to look nice and I want it to match up as best as I can. But like, for example, I clipped that corner. This one, one of my seams that's now hidden was like way super wonky. Sometimes I'll really try to match them up. This time I just really cut my pieces and sewed. You can see where it may not be exactly straight, but the overall look is just really pretty to me and ginghamy. And gingham is fantastic. This is a kind of I almost said normal sized, as if there's a normal size gingham. This is the teeny tiny micro gingham. It reads more like a pastel. So it's like a solid, but it reads like a pastel. So it doesn't really, it's not as showy if you don't get your pieces lined up real straight. I think for the most part, especially these two sizes of gingham, they're actually more forgiving than you think. So if you've been eyeing a gingham shirt and you're like, I don't know, I'm not that precise, just go for it. If you were cutting florals and the florals were going to be going every which way, you wouldn't think anything about it. Polka dot, same thing. I feel like gingham should be the same. Now, this is maybe not the best pattern for ginghams because there's so much of it that's touching on all these corners where they come together. So if you did want it to line up precisely, it's a lot of work. But if you're okay with it being, a little wabi-sabi, it's great. So let me just encourage you that you can totally work with gingham and not have the perfect precision, especially in the smaller ginghams. It's much more forgiving than you think. And I left the purple out here because this is going to be the binding. And I'm hoping that what will happen is those places that maybe I feel like look a little less than pristine in the corners, the dark will really cap it off and make it look nice. So that's the goal. We'll see how it comes out. And then finally, we have arrived at our last reveal. If you've stayed this long with me, which if you had, thank you for staying with me all this time. I know I have a lot to say. So the Gingham Gems is behind me, and each of these pieces has the cutoffs. And I'm not usually one to take the time to sew that 1/4 inch seam on the other side, but I did this time as I was chain piecing. And well, let me just show you. Ta-da! that is what became of those cutoffs. And I said this already, but I'm gonna repeat it. When I was making these blocks, I was just doing little bits and pieces at a time. I didn't sit down and have a marathon block sewing party. And so because I was doing little bits and pieces at a time, when I would get one stretch done, I would just turn it around and sew the other side. And so my half square triangles were already cut and sewn. And so I just trimmed and pressed them. And I think what I'm going to do is actually use that on the back of this quilt. And so two things are accomplished that way. I don't waste my little cutoffs, and I've got really a large portion of the backing already figured out. So now it's just a matter of sewing those guys together and figuring out what's going to be in the corners of that. But I am thrilled to the gills about it. I just can't stand it. I think it's so pretty. So just if you are a person who, like me, is having to sew 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time, or just, 20 minutes after you get home from work, maybe take the time. And when you do your snowball corners, do those little half square triangles so that you can make a little project on the back of your quilt too. So that's what's on my sewing table. I hope you've got something really fun and bright and happy on your sewing table as well. And I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thank you so much for watching.